When church has always been a part of my life. I've told you before, I had a drug problem as a kid. I was drugged to church every time the doors were open. It was Sunday morning, Sunday school, Sunday night, Wednesday night, Bible school, missions week, evangelism outreach week, all of those things that we had back in the day. I was there all the time. Church has always been a part of my life, with kind of a parenthetical time of college. In college, I wasn't incredibly faithful to attending church. I went probably, maybe half the time. Some of those days I went to Mattress Mennonite or Bedside Baptist. There was Reverend Sheets and Pastor Pillow. They were the pastors of that church I went to. I wasn't incredibly faithful, and even when I went, I wasn't tied into a local church. I would show up, and usually would go with some friends, some wingmates. My sister and I would usually go together, but not always. So there was this time that I wasn't connected to a body, to a church, and it was really difficult. I'm in college, studying to be a pastor, not going to church very often, not connected to an organization that I wanted to be a part of and I was really dedicating my life to. And so there was a little bit of hypocrisy in my life, but emotionally, spiritually, there was a struggle because I wasn't connected to other people. Through my classes, and we had Bible studies on our floor. We had a student that would live on our wings who was called a DC, who was called a discipleship coordinator, and it was their job to make sure that we were connecting spiritually with one another and studying and growing, and it was great. And even though I wasn't really connected and I was still growing, there was this kind of a disconnect because I had my friends and I had my roommates and people like that and people I was in class with, but I really missed that connection to the local church. I missed that seeing different generations. I missed walking in and kind of like Cheers, when Norm would walk in. Norm! Oh, come on, I'm not the only one who watched that show. All right. I know it was in the bar. Don't judge. But Norm, I missed that. It's like when we walk in, if you've been around here very long, you walk in and, hey, it's good to see you. Hey, or I've missed you, or whatever. The connection that we have with people. It's human nature. We can talk about introvert or extrovert, and I always find it kind of funny that the introverts almost apologize for being an introvert. It's like, I'm an introvert. Like, why are you, it's okay to be an introvert. It's okay. Literally half the world is an introvert. It's not like you have to apologize for that. And introverts think, or maybe extroverts, I don't know, maybe extroverts like myself think introverts, they don't need anybody. They just put me at home by myself in isolation and I'm fine. That's not true. Introverts, now some of you are like, nah, I don't know about that. But introverts still need people. Introverts still need relationships. Introverts still need connections. Now, somebody like me I'm a little bit of an extrovert, maybe a little bit, a lot. But we do relationships differently, don't we? Introverts have that close connection with people, and they really invest in a few, and they really need their people. As extroverts, we kind of like, well, everybody's my people. Everybody, I don't have any strangers. Stranger is just a friend I haven't met yet. Introvert just doesn't understand that. They have their people, and they're fine with that, but they like their people, and they want their people. Since COVID, we're all familiar with the mental health crisis, right? It has gone through the roof because we were so disconnected from one another. We were stuck in our homes, and we were isolated. That we didn't have that relationship with people, and it literally killed people. They died from being lonely and from just losing hope because they didn't have the connection with one another. You have no idea what it was like. Randy remembers, and I don't know how much Nate was speaking during COVID, but standing there and talking to a camera on a Sunday morning. to share a message with a camera. There's just such a disconnect, and it was such a hollow feeling of how's everybody doing? What's going on in your life? That we were created for relationships. We were created for community. We were created to need one another. I like watching those Alaska shows. Alaska, the Last Frontier. I like watching that show. The Last Alaskans. Probably it might be my favorite reality show is The Last Alaskans. There's these people, they live up in complete northern Alaska. They're all by themselves. And they talk about the hardest thing about living up there is not surviving. The hardest thing that they experience is the isolation. Even there's a few husband and wife couples that they struggle with just being the two of them, of not having other people to connect with and to communicate with. That they struggle with that isolation and that aloneness. We weren't created that way. We were created to need one another. It's just the way we are. And I think one of the things, the curses of Facebook, the curses of social media, is that we think we can be okay spiritually by not coming to church. Now, I realize this morning I might be preaching to the choir a little bit because you're here. I get it. But this is still an important principle that we're going to talk about, and an important principle for us to know, for you to be able to share with others that say, I don't need the church to be a Christian. I think it's one of the most dangerous and dumbest things a Christian can say. My opinion. Based on the Bible. But we're going to talk about over the next few weeks the must-haves if you want to be growing spiritually. We all say, I'm going to assume that that everybody in this room is going to say we're a Christian. You may not be, but you're going to say I'm a Christian. That's not for me to judge or decide. We're going to say we are a Christian. We say this is important, but what does our behavior, what does our actions or attitudes say about that? Because a lot of times you can say, well, church really isn't that big of a deal. I don't need to go to church to be a Christian. I can read my Bible. I can do a devotional. I can watch a service online. I can do some of these kind of things, and I'll be okay. Maybe for a while. Can you be an employee of a company and never show up to work? I work, okay, I know we can work remote. COVID's taught us that. I mean, you know what I'm saying. But one thing about COVID is the companies discovered when the government, when they allowed us to come back to gather, businesses got people back in the office as fast as they could because they realized that productivity from working at home wasn't as effective and wasn't as good as being in the office, as being where you're supposed to be. Not as effective. Productivity went down. Employee retention went down because now I no longer have a loyalty. I no longer have a connection to this company because a lot of us, we like going to work because of the people and the relationships and the connections we have with other people in the shop, with other people in the office. If I never go to the office, if I never go to the shop, if I never go there, I lose that connection, I lose that loyalty, I lose that commitment. So if a better job comes up, well, it's easy just to switch because I'm staying at home anyway. So what matters? What does it matter what name is on my check? And so there was that loyalty that is lost. The employee retention was lost because we just said, well, stay home. Jesus talks about that in the New Testament. The Bible talks about that in the New Testament. Some of you know when I say turn to Hebrews chapter 10, where I'm going with this. When we talk about some of the, like I said, over the next 4 or 5 weeks, we're going to be talking about the must-haves. If you want to be growing spiritually, these are some things that you have to have in your life. If you don't have these 4 or 5 things that we're going to be talking about, you're going to really stunt your growth spiritually. And one of those things is involved in this room, that we have to gather, that we have to come together and meet as a family and meet as a body. So take your Bibles, turn to Hebrews chapter 10. We're going to read verses 23 through 25. Hebrews chapter 10, 23 through 25. The writer of Hebrews is writing to Hebrews. He's writing to the Jewish people that were dispersed, that were living in the ancient Near East and around, in and around and out and about the Roman Empire. The writer of Hebrews says this: "Let us hold tightly, without wavering, to the hope we affirm, for God can be trusted to keep His promise. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works, and let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now that the day of His return is drawing near." If you have your Bible, if you have your pen, there's some things in there that you need to underline. You need to underline that verse that says, don't neglect meeting together. There are 2 one another statements in here and 1 warning. There's a warning to the church and saying, hey, don't neglect this. Because I know the tendency is to kind of drift. I know the tendency is to not. I know that's a draw. Because, man, we think we're busy now. You know they've been busy forever. We think that, oh, now we're busy. Now it's different. I mean, I don't know many of you who are getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning milking cows. I don't know of many of you who are going home after church and milking cows and taking care of chores and doing all that kind of stuff. People have been busy forever. We're not special. We're not unique. Busyness has, the Hebrew writer says, hey, don't neglect this. Priorities can slip in and things can get in the way, and we can set, well, I'll miss this week. I'm really busy, so I'm not going to go this week. I got this other thing. I'll go next week. The next week something comes up. And then this pattern begins to develop, and then we forget, and we're neglecting the gathering together. There's two one another statements. You understand what the writer is saying? Hey, we don't do this alone. It's a one another thing. Look at the whole of the Bible. The whole of the Bible, when it talks about relationships that we have with God, it is always in relationship to community. The context is always community. You go back to the Old Testament, it was always the temple. The temple was the center of the Jewish nation. They came together, they sacrificed together, they worshiped together. When God spoke or when Moses spoke, the entire people came together to hear it. You go to the New Testament. Jesus' call was always to come to me. Hey, He didn't say, hey, come follow me at home. Hey, I'll come to your house and I'll speak to you individually. I'll speak to you individually. I'll speak to you. No, it was come to me. Come. The call was always to one another. There are numerous one another statements in the New Testament. Love one another, serve one another, pray for one another. It was never to be in isolation. We were never to be separate. We were never to stay home. It was always the call to come together. That call hasn't changed. That expectation hasn't changed. His desire, His best for us hasn't changed. It's still together. It's still one another. Some people say, well, I don't like the church. The church is full of hypocrites. Yep. Okay. And it's true. The church is full of hypocrites. I was a hypocrite. I've been a hypocrite. I'm still a hypocrite in some things. I still don't do things right. I still get angry. I still say things. I still think things. I still, I mess up. I still do things to people to tick people off. I can be a jerk sometimes. I know that's a shock and a surprise to all of you. That was really rude to laugh at that. We are. And one thing I've discovered is that people are people. You get mad in this church, you go to another church. Guess what? Same people are there. They got a different name, different face. Same people. People are people. You don't like your job, you don't like your boss, you go to another one, guess what? They're there. Same people. People are people. But we still need one another. What would happen? Say you're dating somebody. You're dating somebody with children. You know they have children. You're aware that they have children, but you haven't met their children yet. You go out for a while. You really like this person, and you actually love this person. And you tell this person, man, I love you. This person says, oh, I love you too. I want you to meet my kids. You go to their house. You guys know where I'm going with this. You meet their kids. Oh, kids are jerks. I don't like those little rugrats. They're brats. I don't want to be around them. You know, they're mean. They said nasty things to me. They weren't nice. They didn't pick up after themselves. They broke my stuff. They hurt my feelings. But, oh, I really love you. What's the chance that relationship's going to continue? Oh, I love you, but I don't like your kids. Your house is kind of in disarray. Your house is kind of broken down. Your house, I don't really like the paint on the color on the walls. I really don't like your carpet. I don't like your furniture. I don't like your house. But man, I love you. Can we still have a relationship? What are the odds? Very small. Very small you can maintain that relationship. What if you are dating somebody, but you never spend time together? What are the chances that relationship is going to grow and going to deepen? You send a text every once in a while. You send an email every once in a while. What are the odds, the likelihood that relationship is going to grow? That the intimacy, that you're really going to get to know that other person? Pretty small. See where I'm going with this? Because we do that with Jesus all the time. Oh, Jesus, I love you, but I don't like your kids. Your kids are hypocrites. Your kids are jerks. Your kids are mean. Oh, but I really love you. Oh, and I don't like your house either, by the way. I don't like how the stage is. I don't like the colors on the wall. I don't like the classes they do. I don't like that stuff. Oh, I really love you. They all go together. Because, it's not like we're perfect either. Right? Oh, come on now. Let's look at a couple of things besides Hebrews. Acts chapter 2:42. The early church met together. It's not on the screen. You just got to listen. You got to take some notes. Acts 2:42. The early church, they met together for teaching and accountability and preaching and sharing together. The early church wasn't separate. The early church was small. You know, in Jerusalem about this time, Jerusalem had like 500 churches. They were all house churches. But they met together for teaching. They met together for sharing, for learning, for education. That's the early church. Go back to Proverbs 27:17. What's the writer of Proverbs say? Iron sharpens iron. You ever try and sharpen a sword or a knife? I carry my knife with me all the time. I think a good man has to have a good knife on him all the time. And I use it. It's a tool. And I sharpen it. I got a whetstone. I'll sit and I'll sharpen it. A little bit of the knife falls away. A little bit of the whetstone falls away. But I got a sharp knife. Iron sharpens iron. So as one man sharpens another. You ever try and take ladies, you ever take your kitchen knife? Maybe men, you have kitchen knives too. I like knives. I have knives. I like my knives in my kitchen. I like my knives sharp. You ever try and sharpen a knife without striking it against something? Take a knife and just wave it around. I'm going to sharpen this knife against nothing. Doesn't work. But yet sometimes we think that that's how we are in our spiritual life. I don't need anybody else. I can grow without the church. When iron sharpens iron, what happens? Sparks fly. Sparks fly. And we can think, oh, that's bad. Oh, no, Bible and Jesus says that's good. Iron sharpens iron. One man sharpens another. When we get together and we have disagreements, sparks may fly. But man, we're sharpening one another. If we can do this honest honestly, and if we can do this with integrity, if we can do this with openness and love, we can sharpen one another. And yes, there may be sparks, and yes, it may hurt, and yes, it may not be easy, but man, when we're done, we're better for it. That can't happen in isolation. That can't happen at home. We need one another. This is going back thousands of years. Solomon understood this. Hey, we need one another to sharpen each other. Luke 4:16. Luke 4:16. Luke records that it was Jesus' custom. It was his habit. When he showed up in town, he went to temple. First thing he did when he went to town is he went to church. Paul talks about that too. He shows up and he goes to church. It was his priority. It was where he knew the body would be. He knew was where he needed to be. It was their priority. It has become our afterthought. It has become our, well, if there's time, if I wake up early enough. I never understood that. I never understood, I can't get up in time. Now I realize I might be kicking some of you in the shin. I don't know. I'm not sorry. We can get up 5 days a week and go to work and go to school and get everybody out the door on time-ish. Maybe you get late once in a while, but we're always there. Kids are always in school. Kids don't miss the bus because that's an inconvenience on us. I don't care if they're running out with one shoe, dragging their backpack, they're out the door on time because I'm not driving them to school. We can do that in every aspect of our life, but then when it comes to Sunday, it's like, Why? Something that's supposed to be the most important thing in our life. We say that Jesus is the most important thing. I probably don't have any Facebook viewers left. We say that Jesus is the most important thing to us. But yet we can't prioritize Him. And I think, church, we should show up early because we're so excited to get there. I can't wait. I can't wait to get to church. I can't wait to see so-and-so. I can't wait to see how their week was going. They told me last week that they were going to have a rough week, or I want to hear how things went. I want to talk to them. I know we have texts and emails and phones now, but that we should be excited to see one another. I wonder what, not because I'm great or awesome or anything, but I wonder what's going to be talked about this morning. I wonder what the Bible's going to say to me today. That we should be looking forward to that. I got to go to church. Now, let's be honest, sometimes I feel that way. I want to go to church. Honest, I do. There's an old pastor's joke. This couple was laying in bed. The husband says, I don't want to, I don't think I'm going to go to church today. I'm tired, I'm crabby, we had a late night, it's early, it's cold outside. I don't want to go to church anymore. And the wife says, honey, you're the pastor. You have to go to church. We feel that way. It's normal. Do you always feel like going to work? Nope. Do you always feel like being a parent? We don't always feel like it. You get to set being a parent off to the side and on a shelf, and I'm not going to parent today. I'm not going to adult today. I'm not going to... No, we can't do that with our faith either. I've told you before, I think the Bible talks about things that aren't natural to us. It's not natural to love, and so it commands to love. It's not natural to serve, and so it commands us to serve. It tells us things that aren't necessarily natural and of our nature. He tells us, don't stop this. Because I think there's a natural tendency to want to drift. There's a natural tendency to want to prioritize other things and do other things. And let's be honest, there are other things that are more fun than going to church. Being in a camper, sitting around a campfire, that can be fun. Going to a beach, family gatherings, outings, whatever. There are things that can be more fun than coming to church. But we do it because it's important and it's our life depends on it. If you don't get up and go to work and you don't have a job, your life falls apart. The same thing is true spiritually. Our life can fall apart if we aren't a part of this group and family and body. And yes, it's a dysfunctional family. Nobody said amen to that. We're a dysfunctional family. We can look across the room and we can say, well, that person kind of ticked me off once in a while. You know, they kind of said something to me. They scolded my kids. I wanted to smack them. Maybe they should have been, but that's another story. We're dysfunctional, but man, we need each other. We need each other desperately in this day and age. And if we are not gathering, you will not have a growing, dynamic, vibrant relationship with Jesus. You won't. We can think we can, and we might for a little while. But I can guarantee you will not maintain a healthy, vibrant, growing relationship without this gathering. We need each other. It's the way we're made. It's the way we're designed. And it's not just me saying this. I'm saying this because the Bible's saying this. Look at some of the words that the New Testament describes the church. And see if it doesn't describe what I'm saying about community versus individuality. These are just a few of the words. The church or the followers of the New Testament are called flock. Is a flock one or many? A city. A field. You have one corn plant? You know, as a farmer, I know that in 1 acre of ground, planting rows at a 30-inch row, which is a standard row, there's 22,000 corn plants in an acre. Why do I still have this useless information in my head? I have no idea. There are so many more important things that I can remember, but 22,000 plants in 1 acre. We're a field. Wedding guests. We are wedding guests, not a guest, not individual. It's also called family. We're compared to sheep. As I mentioned, flock. We're compared to sheep. You know that sheep have a very difficult time. In the wild, they can't survive. But sheep have a very difficult time surviving alone. They are a social animal. I mean, most animals are. Most animals are herd animals. Cows, pigs, horses, sheep. They depend on one another. Animals in the wild. Animals in the wild, if they are alone, they're dead. It's just a matter of time. Same thing is true in the church. If you're alone, you're dead. It's just a matter of time. You may not like that. It doesn't change reality. We need one another. I realized when I started this out, I'm kind of preaching to the choir because you're here. But church, we cannot forget, we cannot underestimate the power and the necessity of this gathering, that it cannot be an option in our life. It cannot be just one more thing we have to do, or maybe we should do. It has to be a priority for us because it depends, our spiritual life and health depends on it. We need each other. And yes, we're dysfunctional. Okay. Doesn't mean you quit. Doesn't mean you give up. We try to be better. We try to correct mistakes. That's the iron sharper iron. Hey, you offended me. You hurt me. And we get better. How are you doing, church? We talk about the church. I am the church. That's true. You are the church, individuals. You're the church. But the Greek word of the New Testament, ekklesia, means congregation or gathering. So there's a little bit of a dichotomy here where, yes, we're the individual, the church as an individual, but we're also the gathering and the community. An interesting statement I heard years ago was, the strength of the pack is the wolf, and the strength of the wolf is the pack. There is the individual aspect to it, that we're not all one, we're not all the same. We're not all cookie cutters, versions of one another. We're unique, we're individual, we have different strengths and abilities. But our individual strength comes from the pack. It comes from all of us. That a wolf on his own has a really difficult time surviving. Even being an apex predator, a wolf isolated will usually starve to death. Church, we need each other. If you want a growing, vibrant, healthy relationship with Jesus, we need each other. It's the way we're made. It's the way we're made. How are you doing? Are you invested? Are you connected? As an organization, we can provide opportunities for us to connect, but it's up to you as an individual to make that choice to connect. How are you doing? Are you connecting? Well, I get this frequently. When we do the say hey for a little bit, for a minute, there are a lot of you don't like that. About half the church because you're introverts. I've heard it. I've been told it. I don't like that. It's my worst time. So I hate that 2 minutes. I do it intentionally. Not to annoy you. That's just a perk. I do it because we need each other. I do it intentionally on purpose because we need one another. You need face-to-face contact. You need a handshake. You need a hug. You know that psychologists, sociologists, whoever has proven that we need a minimum of 7 significant touches per day. 7 significant physical touches per day, or else we emotionally start to deteriorate. Church, we need to get that from one another. We need a godly hug. We need a godly, loving embrace. We need a handshake and a look in the eyes and saying, I see you. I know you. I care about you. We need it. How are you doing? Do you have a vibrant, healthy, growing relationship with Jesus? We need this space and this time. Joel's going to come. We're going to close the service. We're going to sing. You're going to go home. We need each other, church. When we leave this place, this is kind of the foundation for our relationships. Don't neglect this. The warning in this passage we just read in Hebrews, the one warning to one another is we need one another. Don't just leave and kind of forget. People who shared with you, don't forget what they shared. People who maybe looked a little sad, don't forget that. Connect with them. Put your arm around them, even if it makes them a little uncomfortable. I mean, don't be weird about it, but give them a hug. I'm praying for you. I love you. I care for you. I'm here for you. Not just be words, but follow that up with actions. Let's stand together and let's sing. And as we do this, I want you to commit to yourself and now let the Holy Spirit speak to you. Let you know, let Him convict you of maybe your commitment level, your investment level. Maybe if you've been kind of wondering, why am I feeling spiritually dry? Maybe this is one of those things that you need to work at. So let's sing this together.